Alrighty, welcome back to the channel. Today we have quite the long one, so get yourself some snacks and sit down and get ready. Today we are going to be talking about Anna, or Glitter and Lasers, because she actually recently started a podcast where they are going to be going over medical mysteries that people are dealing with. The first episode is Anna talking about basically her entire story from pretty much the beginning. And one thing that I noticed with listening to this is there are some things that seem to have been rewritten, or things that are just a little bit different from what we remember. So we're going to be going over all of that stuff. This podcast is an hour and like 15 minutes long. And so this video is going to be a long one. We have some receipts that we are going to be going over as well. So we're going to be here for a while. So just buckle up and enjoy the ride. This is the podcast right here. It's called The Medical Detectives. She is doing it with this doctor right here, Erin Nance, who is a hand surgeon. I just want to make that very clear. So it says, meet Dr. Nance, New York City-based hand doctor. At Nance MD Hand Surgery, Erin Nance specializes in orthopedic hand and upper extremity surgery, as well as traditional orthopedic services, right? So that's the person that she is doing this podcast with. So I just want to make that clear. So there is someone that is a doctor, but a doctor in very specific thing, which is great. Props to you for being able to do that. But I just want to make that very clear. So we're going to go over the entire podcast. There are some things there's a lot to go over, and there are some things that we're just going to kind of skip through. But without further ado, let's go ahead and just listen.
Welcome to the very first episode of the Medical Detectives podcast, where each week we'll dive into the fascinating, mysterious, and sometimes downright bizarre world of medicine, told by the people who've lived it.
So, first thing, right? So this whole podcast is about people who are medical mysteries, right? And so with that being said, Anna, by being the first person interviewed, as well as she is one of the co-hosts of this podcast, she is basically claiming that her situation is a medical mystery and is equating it to some of the other people that are going to be on this podcast if it continues and has a long life, right? Where it's like, who could have known? What could be the mystery here, right? So I think that's interesting just right off the bat.
Your hosts, I'm Anna O'Brien, and I'm Dr. Nance, an orthopedic surgeon with a passion for uncovering disparities in medicine. I've built a platform on bringing awareness to misdiagnosis in women and sharing stories that can hopefully help people navigate the complicated world of medicine.
And I'm Anna. I'm a creator with my own medical journey, and while Dr. Nance has all of the experience of a doctor, I know what it's like to be a patient with my own medical mystery. And I'm here to ask the questions that you, the audience, are going to be wondering.
This show is all about sharing unique medical stories that are not just fascinating, but could also be helpful, whether you're a patient, a caregiver, or just someone who loves a good mystery.
Each week we'll have a guest on the show to share their personal medical story, and we'll unpack it together. But today, for the first episode, things are a little bit different.
That's right, Anna, because for this first episode, our guest is you.
Yep, I'm in the hot seat today. So if I sound just a little bit nervous, it's because I am. I'm representing you and your stories. And I also represent people who don't have a medical degree, who aren't going to know all of the lingo and might be a little confused along the way.
I just love the clearly rehearsed kind of thing that they have here, because you'll see it the rest of the podcast. It's not like this. So when I was listening to it, I was just like, oh my gosh, you guys are great actresses. Fantastic job.
I've experienced personally the highs and lows and frustrations of navigating the healthcare system. So to be the first person to kick this off kind of feels right.
Anna's story is the perfect way to kick things off. Her story is relatable, full of surprises, and I just feel so lucky she's decided to share it with us.
I just feel lucky to have the opportunity to share it, because I wish stories like this were available to me on my journey, and now they will be. My story is about a lot of different things: the stigma plus-size bodies face when receiving medical care, the body positive movement, and also being a medical mystery and what that feels like. But that's just a few of the things we'll talk about.
So again, the claim, Anna is a medical mystery, right? There's no explanation about the things that she's going through.
Mine is just one of the many stories we're going to be telling on this show, and I'm really excited to be doing this with you. We just hope that this show will give people and patients a place to be seen. to find community and learn from these incredible stories on their own medical journeys.
Absolutely. So buckle up, because this first story sets the stage for everything to come. Anna, you ready to dive in?
So, the first thing I want to say, obviously, your boy is not a doctor in the traditional sense. I do have a doctorate in YouTubeology, and so we'll be using that today. But I think the reason that this is really interesting is because one thing about Anna is that she has definitely told her story many times, and a lot of times that story kind of changes with the weather. It basically changes with who she is telling, right? And so there are a lot of inconsistencies with the story that we will be exploring in today's very short, quick video. So let's go ahead and keep going.
Let's do it. Hello, Dr. Nance.
Hi, Anna. Welcome to the show.
I know. I'm a little nervous because on this first episode, it's me.
I don't know any other podcast where the co-hosts actually interview the other co-host, so I'm excited.
I'm going to be real. I think that happens very frequently on podcasts where the co-host will interview the other co-host, but I'm nitpicking now. So
yeah, it's a whirlwind. I think that it is important though, because I think it makes sense as to why I'm here, right? Like, obviously you make sense. You're a doctor, but why am I here? I ask that all the time.
Well, I'd actually love to start with the why. Can you share your intention of sharing your story?
Yeah, so my intention with all of this, and even when this came across my plate as something potentially to do, it really is that I've been on a really long journey, right? And I would say that in some ways I'm not even at the end yet, but every step I've taken forward has significantly improved my life. And for a really long time, and we'll talk a little bit more about this when I, share my story, I was afraid to take the first step because of a lot of the noise surrounding me. And I think if I can encourage just one person to take a step towards feeling better, and whatever that means for them, because it is incredibly personal, then it will have been worth it. And I think that women are in a lot of ways built to be afraid of medicine and doctors and seeking.
So the first thing that I noticed, and even her explaining her situation right here, is that one thing that is prevalent in this whole podcast is really not taking accountability for things that Anna has done herself, as well as not really, I think, telling the full story. And so there's a lot of times where she will say things that happened, but there will be things that are left out that I feel are important to the conversation that I think don't fit the narrative that Anna wants to tell in the podcast. That's missing, right? That makes Anna look really good or look like the victim, right? I think that's one of the biggest things that I notice in this podcast is Anna plays the victim very well.
Health, and we're sold so many other solutions that aren't really solutions, that I'm here to advocate and speak for the fact that there are doctors out there that care, and it may just take some work to find them.
Well, that's a great way to start. So you mentioned that.
So, she says there, we're sold so many solutions that aren't really the solution, but Anna has promoted so many things that are, for lack of a better term, a little dicey, so I don't know.
You started to notice kind of some changes in your body. When were you aware that your body was not the same as everyone else around you?
So the changes in my body really started to happen around puberty. I just started to gain weight, which was kind of unusual because I was always a really active kid. Like they used to call the church doors the Anna doors because I was running in and out of them all the time, causing trouble. And I used to do this dance where I would move my feet really fast because I just had so much energy. So it was puzzling to a lot of people, how was I gaining weight? And the first thing went to oh, she must be eating wrong, right? So I remember around that time when I started to gain weight that my mom took me to this really shady doctor in the middle of nowhere. And I remember even as a little kid being like, this place is sketch. and went in. There was like one of those little windows that they pulled open, and I looked inside, and the woman asked me like 3 questions. Not one of them was my age or my weight or anything like that. It was literally like, do you have a heart murmur? Do you have any of these other conditions, diabetes, I think? And this is like at 8 years old. Shut the door, took me in. This older man gave me a speech about why I was awful because I was overweight. And then he wrote me a prescription for what I now know was fen-phen. So at 8 years old, I started taking fen-phen.
And so I want to make it clear, right? There is definitely a problem with what had happened when she was younger. And like, I can relate. I had some terrible experiences when I was younger, going to the doctor and like not having the blood pressure monitor fit my arm, right? That was something that happened. Having a doctor just like consistently the entire time I was there, just like doing like this with his tongue, like looking at everything over and all, just making me feel like terrible, right? That is fair, right? Going through an experience when you are younger, it's really tough. What the issue now is that it seems that Anna is kind of stuck in that whole mindset of like, these are things that happened to me that I didn't have any control over and that I couldn't change. And, you know, it's not fair. It's definitely not fair. And I've talked about this with Anna plenty of times. Just because something isn't your fault, especially at the start, right? It doesn't change the fact that it might be your responsibility to make a change. And it seems that Anna, especially when we go through the whole podcast, kind of refuses to take that responsibility and just feel like, well, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. And like, it's almost like this entire podcast is trying to find the fault. Whose fault is it? Because it's clearly not mine. It has to be coming from somewhere else. And I think that if you're someone that's wants to lose weight, that has a significant amount of weight to lose, you have to understand that just trying to find the fault isn't going to help you anyways, right? You have to take responsibility and understand that there are certain things that you can do to make a change, right? Regardless of, even if there are things that are going on, right? Anna has lipedema. We've talked about that before. There are plenty of people that have lipedema that are able to make weight loss happen. One of those people is Anna herself has lost weight while having lipedema, right? So it's just because something might not be your fault doesn't mean that it's not your responsibility. And it feels like Anna is really not trying to take responsibility at all, right?
And wild.
Fen-phen is a stimulant that was a popular kind of diet drug in the 90s, but it had significant side effects, mainly cardiac problems. So it is no longer used to treat obesity.
Let's just say that's to look back at that now and even to have had to do some things on my journey because of that, because now what we know what fen-phen can do to the body, there were concerns about heart issues when I was pursuing other things down the road. So I don't know why that was okay. I don't know why it was so casual. I think I'm still coming to terms with why my parents thought that was okay to do. But regardless of it, I was put on.
I mean, hindsight's 2020. I think, they obviously weren't trying to hurt you. It's just one of those things. Like, my mom did stuff that, looking back, I'm like, wow, why would you do that? But at the same time, it is what it is. She had the best intentions. She made a mistake. It is what it is.
And I lost some weight, but not really. And I just remember during that period of my life that every once in a while, I would get to eat normal food. So my mom, I remember, threw everything away in the house, had this big menagerie where everything that, in my opinion at the time, tasted good was in the garbage. We were left with brown rice, flavorless chicken, shredded wheat, and vegetables. That's it. And I remember, and I have this very vivid memory of when I was about, I want to say 10 or 11. I went to my friend Nikki S's house, and her mom made me a cheeseburger. And I remember sitting there eating that cheeseburger being like, this is the best thing I've ever had in my entire life. This cheeseburger, wow. And this cheese, it wasn't even probably that good of a cheeseburger, but because I'd eaten such...
Dang, just burning the the childhood friend's mom that made you a cheeseburger said it wasn't even good. That's savage.
Terrible food for like a while.
Like we're talking In-N-Out cheeseburger or
Yeah, like it was probably like McDonald's cheeseburger, but I just remember being like, oh my God. I was like, my life has forever changed. Like music played, lights flashed. Like it was like this amazing thing. And I didn't die. There were no issues. And I just had a normal day. And I remember that up until that point, I had a really weird relationship between pleasing my parents and losing weight. Like I felt every time I got on the scale that I was a little bit of a failure because I wasn't losing as quickly as they thought I should have been losing taking fen-phen.
I definitely understand that. I think that that's definitely one of the really dangerous parts about trying to get a child to lose weight is that you just don't understand as a kid, man. You don't understand why you have to do this. You don't understand. Like, you just think, okay, I need to lose weight because people are mad at me that I'm not. And you want to do whatever you can to obviously appease your parents and make them happy. So that's why I think, like, kids trying to get them to lose weight, and especially making it clear that you're trying to get them to lose weight, I think is usually just kind of a recipe for disaster. I think, like, it's usually not the kid's fault. It's probably the parent either not understanding nutrition, maybe the kid isn't getting enough exercise. There's a bunch of different reasons, but it's like, for the most part, it's going to be out of the kid's hands. And so blaming the child instead of taking responsibility as a parent, I think, is the wrong way to go.
But I was starving and still very active. So what ended up happening is life was just kind of...
But I will say right there, right, where we hear that, I was starving, but I was still very active. I think that's the seed that was planted that I still think is being watered today, right? Where I move a lot, and we've seen it in, the 5K video and all of this stuff. I move so much and I'm so active and I work out and I run and I do all this stuff, and I just don't understand why I can't lose weight. I don't understand. I'm not eating that much. But then there will be a video where she comes out and is like, well, okay, I was actually eating too much and I gained weight and I'm really going to lock in this time. It's just like, the reality changes when it is beneficial. And that's a problem, right? Because if reality is reality, if you're eating too much, it doesn't make you a bad person, but you have to be honest with yourself to make that change. And I think it changes depending on, the mood.
Bleak. And so I would say in a little bit, I stopped being as active because I had no freaking energy. And my body started to change because I wasn't the same active person I was before. And I started to put on weight instead of losing it. And I think at this point, a lot of the articles and stuff that came out about fen-phen, we all got off of it because it wasn't legal anymore. So basically, I gained a bunch of weight and I kind of just accepted it. In my 20s, I moved on from my parents. I moved into a really amazing group of friends. And I think that every friend group goes through this. I mean, I hope they still don't go through it, but back when I was in my 20s, everybody went through it, which was like the collective culture where girls got together and dieted together. So we did the thing that everybody seemed to do, which was join Weight Watchers, right? We all got together. We'd go to our group meetings together. We would support each other. We'd share recipes.
So, I mean, hearing this, it just sounds like a friend group that is trying to support each other. I mean, I had plenty of times. Actually, the time that I actually ended up losing weight, my best friend Nolan, me and him went to the gym together. We would go to the gym together every day. I didn't have a car at the time, so he would take me, and he was supporting me in that, right? So it's just so interesting seeing that as a negative, right? Turning that into a negative is very different than the experience that I had. Obviously, I'm sure anything can be negative. There can be people that are, they end up like trying to turn it into a competition, and it can be like that. But I think just in and of itself, I could understand a group of friends, maybe some of them are overweight, being like, hey, let's all together do this for the, the camaraderie, and having someone to be, they're doing it, so I'm going to do it as well. Right? Like, I don't know, it's an interesting way to frame it.
And honestly, I built my friendships around losing weight. And that's a really weird dynamic, right? Where that success in losing weight was also like a success of friendship. When it doesn't work for you as simple as that, it's almost like you're a failure in your friendship dynamic. which is something that honestly, I don't know if I realized until I just started talking about this part of it. But like, I think as we fast forward and I stopped losing weight, I lost about 100 pounds that way just by literally getting active.
So she says there, right? I lost 100 pounds by being more active. She lost 100 pounds by being more active. So that's how you lose weight, right? Eat less, move more. She says it right there. Where's the mystery?
As part of this Weight Watchers group, and I would go to Soul Cycle with these girls. I would run to Soul Cycle, do 1 to 2 Soul Cycle classes, and run back. I started walking to work, so I would walk from Brooklyn to Midtown Manhattan, which is about a 4-mile walk, and I would walk there and back. And I started just becoming really, really active.
So she's saying that she was walking 8 miles a day, right? 4 miles to work, 4 miles back, running to the Soul Cycle thing, running back. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of activity. And I think that maybe that was too much, but you could also you don't have to like stop all of that. You could tone it back a little bit and it still be healthy, right? And so it seems like Anna, what I'm seeing is it's definitely a very much so an all or nothing mentality. Again, that's if this is true. And I know that sounds harsh, but there's quite the history of things being stretched, the truth being stretched. So that's the reason I'm saying that.
Again, I never was like a binge eater or an overeater. So it kind of was like my activity just jumped up and that's where the weight went. But then it stopped. I had lost weight and gained weight before, but this was very different because I was gaining weight while still maintaining a really healthy lifestyle. So I was still going to spin class. I was still running. I was still eating healthy. I was still walking to and from work. So it didn't make sense that I was gaining weight back. I honestly didn't know what to think. I felt very cheated. I felt very angry because I felt like I did everything right and this is my predicament. So like, what the hell? What the hell? And I did start to feel, and I don't think I've ever admitted this to myself until this podcast, which is a little bit wild.
So she's never admitted this to herself until this podcast. Okay, so this is a revelation right now.
But I think I started to isolate myself because I was embarrassed that I wasn't able to keep up with my friends who were making, oh God, already crying, who were making all of these amazing changes in their life. And I was making the same changes, but not seeing the same success. So you begin to build this mental capacity of like, I must be lying to myself. I must be a failure. I don't want to have the conversation about why isn't it working. And I don't even know if my friends judged me in that way. But
yeah, I mean, they probably didn't, right? And so that's probably all in your head. But again, so we're hearing Anna says she lost 100 pounds doing this routine, and then the weight loss is plateauing, or it's no longer going down, or maybe it's going up, right? And then she says, I start isolating myself. So I think that maybe the isolation and not going out and not doing all of those things ended up contributing to it, right?
I judged myself in that way because I built my entire community and friendship around managing weight. And then I couldn't be successful in that friendship because I wasn't losing weight anymore. I even felt that way partially in my job. Like it's wild to think, when I'm really honest with myself, how much that inability to achieve that goal really messed me up.
Well, I think which obesity as a medical term, right, and label carries an unwarranted moral judgment to it that does not apply to other medical conditions.
Yes. I think that there is a lot of stigma about obesity, and I think there's a lot of stigma about bodies in general and what visual cues they give us. So
this is, interesting, right? So now we are comparing obesity to these other medical issues that I'm assuming they're going to delve into in this podcast, right? Because it's the medical mysteries. And what's frustrating to me and why I don't like comparing them, I think that you can say that, obesity is more than just someone, being lazy, right? I think it's more than that. But to say that it's on the same level as a some sort of disease that you have zero control over you contracting it or, you having that disease is disingenuous, because Anna herself said in this podcast that she had lost 100 pounds doing things that are, doing exercise, moving her body, things that you can control. And so to compare the two, personally for me, I think that it's disingenuous. And a lot of the comments on that, we're not going to go over the comments on this podcast, but a lot of the comments were that. It felt like people felt like to compare this to other medical mysteries is just not fair, because there was something that she was able to do. And, she said it herself. She lost 100 pounds and she lost weight a ton of times in the past. So I think that shows that was something that was happening. So, yeah.
Regardless of whether you're plus size or you use a wheelchair, people are going to assume an inordinate amount of things about you based on that visual picture.
So, and then just right there, comparing, saying plus size or using a wheelchair, I don't know, man. I just feel like that's incredibly condescending.
And as much as you may be different than that visual picture, you are never given the benefit of the doubt. In fact, you're always climbing back from a negative assumption. The hardest part about not losing weight for me is that I didn't know what else to fix. And I think the automatic reaction to me was just to do more. But then what happens is you do more and, I would eat less and less. I would work out more and more. And I would say, honestly, running to SoulCycle, doing 2 classes and running back is probably not healthy behavior. It's just not. And
so this is all right. So she says she ran to SoulCycle, did 2 classes and then run back. I personally, and again, I'm just being honest, I don't believe that. I don't believe that she was doing that consistently. If you're doing that consistently, frequently, weekly, multiple times a week, there is no way that you're going to start gaining weight randomly out of nowhere, right? Maybe she did that. This is a problem that I've seen with a lot of people, even like, this is just really common. People will focus on the quote unquote good days, right? It's really common when I'm talking to people about losing weight, is like, oh yeah, I only eat, 1,200 calories. And it's like, they're only eating 1,200 calories maybe twice a week, right? Or they're having good days twice a week, and that's what they think about. But then they're not really focusing on the other days where they're eating a lot more than that, right? But like in their head, that's what they're doing because that's the goal that they have set for themselves, and they're able to do it every once in a while. So in their head, that's what they're doing. But if they actually take a step back and look at their week or their entire month, the amount of times that they actually did that was very few and far between. I personally believe that that's probably what happened here. That she was not running to SoulCycle, doing 2 SoulCycle classes and running back every single day on top of walking 4 miles to and from work for a total of 8 miles a day. I'm sorry.
There was one point in my life where I would have been proud of that, would have been like, look at all the exercise I was doing. But the reality is like And
then right there was one point in my life where I would have been proud of that. And I mean, I would say that point was very frequently, right? If we go back to the 5K videos where she's like, I ran a 5K, and people are like, I don't know if you ran it. You mean maybe you completed one, but she was very adamant. I ran it. Right. And so this was, again, it's a pattern of behavior, right?
Was trying to compensate for what my body wasn't doing. And I thought, well, maybe if I just pushed harder, maybe if I just did more, it would change. And then when it didn't, I really did feel like a failure. I also felt like I was delusional. I think that's a really good word for my whole entire journey, is like, maybe I'm lying to myself. Right? Like maybe I am eating all of these things. Maybe my calorie counting is off. Maybe I'm not exercising as hard as I think I am. Maybe I'm not going fast enough on that bike. So it becomes this constant internal, like, what can I do more? Until you just break down and give up. And that's essentially what happened. I just finally was like, this is too freaking much. I'm done. And I started to feel just unconnected to my friends. So I dove into work. I would work constantly. I would sleep in the office. And in line with that, we were testing a new piece of software that was for content management for social media. We needed to test that software. I was like, well, I'll just make some Instagram content. We'll see if that does well. I don't really care. It's all about the job. And anyone who knows me knows that I am a somewhat recovering workaholic. I'm still working on it, but it is who I am. So I became really good at regularly posting, at trying different things, because I was trying to test this software that helped brands and companies do that. Well, I worked really hard, and because of that, I inadvertently grew a following on social media, just trying to test new technology.
So, the claim is that she didn't even want these followers, right? It just so happened because she worked so hard. Okay.
And it started off kind of slow. I remember I had like 10,000 followers, maybe in the first couple months. And I was like blown away by that. I was like, I've made it big. But I had no clue what that would lead to. You start with the 10K, and then it's 20K, and then it's 50K, and then it's 100K, and then it's, oh my God, 200,000 people follow me. But that also means that there is a lot of people who feel like they have a say in my life, for good and for bad. Being in a bigger body is very polarizing, and sometimes that's just enough. That just existing in a bigger body and not apologizing for it is enough of a reason to hate me. And one day I was a nobody.
So I want to say that I think that there are people that are out there that exist that with Anna, they just see that she's bigger and they're like, I don't like her. I don't like anyone that's bigger. That's definitely happening. But what I've noticed in this podcast is that everyone is lumped into everyone's just a hater. And there's no fair reason to criticize. And there's no one that's saying anything of any validity because they're just saying it because I'm fat, right? And we see this a lot with ALR as well, but with Anna. And it's like any criticism is because I'm fat, and that's the only reason. And this is where this kind of starts here. And it continues for the rest of the podcast.
And all of the sudden I was like enemy number one to some people. And I think that's when I noticed, actually, if I have to be incredibly honest, the time where I realized my life had been changed by this forever is I posted a picture of myself in a swimsuit, just a normal picture, just me on a beach. And Gillette, the company, asked me if they could use it to just repost. And again, at this point, I didn't know anything about making money. I wasn't making any money. And I was like, sure, you can repost this. I don't care. They ended up using it. It ended up getting in the wrong hands, and it became international news. People saying that a plus size person should not be used in advertising for a product like a razor. And it ended up to someone doing a podcast about whether or not plus size people should be in advertising. It was a very, very popular podcast. I'm not going to name it specifically, but they had a long discussion about whether I should be seen or whether or not people like me should be seen. And it led to me actually getting attacked on a sidewalk.
Okay. So the Gillette thing, this is a big turning point that she says, right, in her life. And so we're going to actually go over this video because in this video, she actually talks about that experience as well. And so there's, again, going to be some differences and inconsistencies from this. So let's go ahead and check this first part of the video, and then we have a couple clips that I wanted to watch.
When this happened, I reached out to that brand and I said, I don't know how to deal with this. I've never dealt with anything like this in my entire life. I don't want to talk to the press because I don't want my words twisted. And I don't even know what to say. Like, it was a picture of me on a beach having fun. I don't even understand why people are upset. And I don't feel like I need to justify anything because I didn't do anything wrong. So I chose not to speak to press, and I asked them for support in finding a therapist. I did not get that support.
So she claims here that she reached out to Gillette because she felt that she was getting attacked because they reposted something of hers. Again, this was not a sponsored thing. This wasn't something they agreed upon. They asked her to repost it, and they did. And now she went back to them to ask to pay for mental health support, and they didn't. Now, I want to make it clear what this ended up being is an ad for BetterHelp, which BetterHelp has had better days. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that that's probably why, if you look, the comments are turned off on this video, right? So she makes that claim. But if we go a little bit further, this is, again, her kind of talking about the experience.
Just walking him, he was sniffing things, out doing a normal thing. And a car of, I want to say young adults, so maybe like 18 to 21 boys. I want to call them boys because these definitely were not men. They were childish as hell. Drove by me, started screaming, "That's that fat chick from the swim photo." They took their fast food and they threw it at me out the car window while one of their friends filmed me with their camera. And they laughed, and it was terrifying, and I broke into a complete panic attack.
So she's claiming that young men that were driving in their car saw Anna, and because of this thing that was kind of going viral, they stopped and they noticed who she was, and they filmed her and threw food at her. I mean, if that actually happened, yeah, that's horrible. Again, with the track record that Anna has, I'm not sure if that's exactly what happened and why they did that. Maybe that actually happened. Did they actually say, that's the girl from, like, they yelled out of their car, "That's the girl from that viral video that's going everywhere. Throw this at her." So I'm sorry, but I don't know about that.
I literally fell on the ground and honestly kind of blacked out. It was the most unsafe I've ever felt in my entire life. And honestly, if you want to know why I love my dog, it's because he got on my chest and he stayed there with me and calmed me through a panic attack. I have never been afraid of the world. And I have never been scared of doing anything that I wanted, really. I never let my weight affect me. And before becoming a creator, I didn't believe that it actually could stop me from doing the things I wanted. And if I know that's easy to say in front of a camera now that I'm like this plus size femme fatale or whatever. I love how I just called myself a femme fatale, but I really did live my life, and that I can do anything and nothing's going to stop me. And I have a lot of examples of where I achieved that. But in this moment, that confidence and that power was completely taken away from me. And I never knew if I would get it back. I'm being very real with you. I ended up leaving New York. This is one of the reasons I left New York. A reason that I've never shared up until this point.
So right there, right? She says it in the video. She has never shared this up until this point. So this is the first time that she is sharing this, right? And so it's the reason that she left New York is because that people noticed who she was from a Gillette ad, and they decided to throw food at her and make fun of her, right? So let's continue with the podcast.
And it's part of the reason I left New York. So I think that's when it clicked, that I was in a lot of ways powerful, because if I could make somebody this angry, then that's pretty powerful. But also I had to think about my life in a very different way. I had to protect myself, and I had to learn to navigate in this world where people knew who I was and had an opinion about me. I also started to get very involved in the body positivity movement, and this opened up a whole...
And before we move on, Gillette did, so there was a defense. Again, expecting them to pay for mental health, I don't know, it's kind of wild. But if we go to this is a headline where it literally says, Gillette defends a photo of plus size model after it sparks backlash on Twitter. But if we go down here, it's from Gillette Venus, right? So Venus, I'm sure most of you know, Gillette's kind of sister brand or whatever. Venus is committed to representing beautiful women of all sizes, shapes, and skin types, because all types of beautiful skin deserve to be shown. We love Anna because she lives out loud and loves her skin no matter how the rules say she should display it. And it goes on to say, in a statement on Today's Style, the brand clarified that the photo was not part of an ad campaign for Gillette. They simply shared O'Brien's photo as part of their mission to celebrate women of all shapes and sizes. Ann O'Brien is a body positive advocate and influencer who has an inspiring platform of self-love, said by Ann something or other, a spokesperson for Gillette, parent company Procter & Gamble. She is not a paid partner of Venus, nor the image was created of the brand's requests. We simply asked to share the photo as part of our efforts to represent more women and their stories on our platform, right? So this was, 2019, 2020-ish, when the body positivity thing was definitely a lot more prevalent than it is now. I think that a lot of the brands were kind of jumping on it because it was popular. And so, I just wanted to clarify that.
Different worlds where my weight was seen in just a very different way for the first time in my life. So now I had this beautiful place in social media where people were like, you're beautiful, you're special. And we were talking about bigger bodies in a different way. I had lived in this world where I had learned to accept negative preconceived opinions of me and rise above them, which is, again, a great skill, but not super healthy or amazing to live in. And now was presented with a world where I didn't have to prove anything, or at least it felt like I didn't have to prove anything. And that was, for lack of a better word, addictive. We were right in that crux of body positivity coming to light. So the acceptance of a bigger body was on the way of being more accepted versus less. And so there was a lot of advocacy. There was a lot of supportive people. Don't get me wrong, still bad people.
And there was a lot of opportunities as well
out there saying mean things. That is the internet. But it was definitely a better place. And that space gave me hope in a lot of ways. Hope that I could learn to live in this body and not necessarily constantly be focused on changing that body. And if the body positive community helped me stop measuring my value in a size and helped me start appreciating what my body was capable of. And I will always be grateful for that. That said, my time in that community did cause some harm. And I think that that's really hard to say because I don't want people to feel betrayed or hurt or like I'm biting the hand that fed me. But there's a lot of things in that community that make going to the doctor or even doing basic everyday things scary. There's a lot of discussion about how the medical community doesn't support fat bodies, which is true in a lot of instances, but it doesn't mean that all medical professionals are out to get plus size people.
And so this is where, now she's talking about, she joined body positivity but now she's talking about kind of the negatives. And I think a big reason for that is because she went fully into the body positivity thing and she was like super into it. And she was like, the quintessential body positive person for a while. But then there were things, her health started kind of going to the wayside and things weren't going well. And so she decided that she wanted to move her body more and be more active. And one thing that I've noticed with Anna and Glitter and Lasers is that there's always this almost need to show people that she can do this, she can jump, she can run, she can, she's not unhealthy. She's super, she's super capable of doing all of these things when maybe she might not actually be able to do that. And I think that really rubbed a lot of people in the body positivity space the wrong way. And this was like, I feel like this was the first real time where she really started struggling with, one of her groups that she felt that she belonged to, she no longer felt that way, and bridges started to be burned. And, that's what she's kind of talking about here.
Also, there was a lot of discussion about it's okay to take a break. It's okay to be tired, which, again, a valuable insight into life. But I began to feel like, being tired is just part of a bigger body. Being exhausted, being in pain, these things are just normal because I am plus size. So it began to write a script for me that this was just my reality. And this is the reality I had to live in. And I just got, for lack of a better word, shitty cards. And there's nothing I could do.
This is a great segue into a question about when you started to think about perhaps your size as a more medical issue, if there were something else beyond just your size that was causing you to feel tired and everything that you just described.
I'm going to be really, really candid about all of this. This is a podcast, so we're just going to be real, right? I hadn't had a normal poop for years, and it was beginning to affect my ability to do basic everyday things.
So she says here that the reason that she started looking into maybe this being a medical thing, which it's funny because we're 22 minutes into this podcast and we're finally talking about the medical implications of this, but whatever, that her bowel movements were the thing that really started to clue her in on maybe there's more going on, which I think is very interesting because bowel movements, you know, there's a lot of variance there. And so very interesting that there was years and years going by where there wasn't a normal bowel movement, you know?
And I would get so exhausted on top of this. Sorry, I just said the poop because I was like, that was the thing that like broke the camel's back. But it would also be things like I would go and have a great day. Like I did all of these things. I'm like, man, my body's amazing. I can do all of these things. And then I would pass out. And I would physically be unable to leave my bed. Like everything in my body would just break down. And I would be stuck that way for 2 to 3 days. I would have gastrointestinal issues. I sometimes would be vomiting. I would be violently ill. I started struggling to get out of bed just in general.
So she's struggling to get out of bed, but at the same time, this is when she's posting a lot of the body positivity stuff, and she's saying, "Oh, look what I can do. Look at these things. Look at that. Oh, I'm so body positive. Everything's fine." And so there was a disconnect between what was portrayed on social media versus what was the reality. And I think that's something that's very common with Anna's content is a lot of times, and she'll even admit it herself, right? After the fact, oh, I was really struggling. But if you go back through her profile, you're like, it didn't seem like it, you definitely portrayed something that wasn't the truth, right?
And I kept pushing myself physically because around this point, I started to feel in my body really broken down. So as I'm in this community, I just kept thinking, oh, the reason my knee hurts is because I'm fatter. The reason my ankle hurts is because I'm fatter. The reason my thighs hurt are because I'm fatter. The reason I'm tired is because I'm fatter. The reason when I stand up, I almost pass out is because I'm fatter. All of these things just became related to the weight, and that's just how my body was. And so I initially pretended like a lot of those things didn't exist. I think when it became really clear, I have one moment I remember that is the moment where I realized I couldn't live like this anymore. I was in Hawaii. We were filming swimsuits or something, as one does as a creator. And I couldn't walk in the sand. It hurt so bad. And there's a video of me somewhere, I'd burn it if I could, where I fall into the sand and I just cry. And then I scream, "Turn the effing camera off. I don't want anyone to see me like this. I'm so ashamed."
And so the Hawaii trip, right? This was quite the deal for Anna. I remember this happening. And, she says if she could, if she could burn this video, she would. It's interesting because it's on her YouTube channel. So let's go over this this Hawaii trip from her own perspective. Yeah.
I like to think of myself as fairly active. I like to think of myself as strong, especially since now I've been working out actually every single day since January 1st. I thought I was, I don't know, in perfect shape. Not perfect shape, but I thought I was like much further down the road than I was.
So she's claiming here that she felt that she was basically almost in perfect shape and she'd been working out every day since January 1st. This video was uploaded March 27th. So like 3 straight months of working out every single day.
And what I realized in Hawaii is that I'm not. And I've become okay, and this is probably like the perfect time for this to happen, but I've become okay with the fact that I'm doing the same activities and the same movements and I'm doing them well, but they're the same and they were hard for me when I first started, but they're maybe not so hard for me right now, right? And I think where this really hit me was we had done 2 days of hiking. We had done this hike up to Lighthouse and then a hike up to Diamond Head, which is like over all of Hawaii. And they were very hard hikes for me. They were very not so hard hikes for my videographer, John, my creative director. And they were moderately hard hikes for my friend, Emily, who is much smaller than me. But for me, these were some freaking hard hikes. Like, I was stopping, my heart rate was all over the place. I felt like I was really pushing my body. And after these 2 hikes, we kind of took a quote unquote day off. It was not a day off, where we filmed swim. And I remember just how much my body hurt trying to film swim and how little I could keep up with them. There is a point, I don't think it was captured on camera because I literally screamed, "Turn off the freaking cameras." I didn't say frickin', I said something else. Because
Scandalous. You said the F word.
I was so ashamed, where I was walking in some pretty wet sand and my feet were kind of slipping into the sand, maybe about a half a foot, maybe even a foot in some cases. And I couldn't physically lift my legs out of the sand.
And like the reason that I think this can be such a problem is that the photos that were being taken were almost certainly going to be used as like, look at, I'm living my life even though I'm bigger and I can do these things and you could do it too, and don't let anyone tell you can't. But really behind the scenes, this is what's going on. This is one of the biggest problems I have with the whole body positivity movement, is that there are so many little highlights that will be featured, but the reality behind the scenes a lot of times is nothing like that, right?
They were so exhausted and so tired that the way I got out of the sand was like literally falling over on the sand, saying a whole bunch of swear words and crying. It didn't actually help me get out of the sand, but I think the emotional release helped me eventually get up. But this happened a couple times where something simple like walking in the sand was so daunting and so overwhelming that I literally didn't know how I was going to get through it. And the idea of like making it to the top. And it got to the point where I finally did get out of the sand. I felt so overwhelmed and so embarrassed, like just so ashamed that like this is where I was. After working out all this time, some freaking sand took me out. And I remember going up to the top of this like cliff where there was like oceans hitting it, not oceans, waves hitting it, and looking out and just bawling with my back to John and Emily, just tears coming down my face because I was so embarrassed and I was so ashamed that I couldn't keep up.
So that's the Hawaii story from her own mouth. And I want to make it clear, like, obviously that's a really crappy thing to deal with. It's not a fun experience, right? But the whole premise of this podcast is medical mystery. And like, I can't believe that this happened. I don't understand why, right? So it's like important that that's the frame that you are looking at this with, right? And so, but I just wanted to go over that, the Hawaii story from when it was pretty close to when it had happened from her, right? So let's keep going.
And I was this person who represented someone who loves their body. And I was at war with my body. And in that moment, I was like, I am such a liar. And I think that moment is where I was like, I need to make some changes. And I did not share that with the internet right away. I never shared that specific moment with the internet because it was too personal.
So, the claim that she never shared it, I don't know if maybe she's like really focusing on the semantics of like that exact video and audio where she's cussing, but like the experience, she did share it. So I don't know. It's just like the version of events are a little strange here.
I sometimes wonder if I've hurt people. As a creator in the body positivity space, I parroted a lot of the same messages that everybody else did. Love your body, indulge in what you want. Life is short. Don't Don't feel like you need to have this health standard. And that line of thinking at a very high level isn't wrong, right? But I often wonder if I have driven people to not seek health. And I wonder if there's people who listened to me, who believed in me, who followed me and are worse off because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a very fair thing to be worried about. And I do think that there are plenty of people that are guilty of that, of making claims and saying things are a certain way in front of a camera or on an Instagram caption or in a TikTok, right? This is what's real. And then behind the scenes, it's not what's actually happening, right? And the reason that that is such a big problem is there are so many people that maybe are smaller than Anna or don't have as much extra weight, but they are struggling so much and they're like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I do the things that Anna O'Brien is doing or why, this other person is doing? And then they start to feel even worse about themselves. And this person is not even actually feeling that way. They feel completely different. And then Anna herself is saying that she maybe is saying all these body positivity things, but then behind the scenes is actually losing weight and actually focusing on her health and trying to make things better and not sharing that with her audience. So basically like lying, right? Not being truthful. That's not good, right? That's a problem. And people around that time had an issue with it, right? And again, those people weren't just quote unquote haters. Those are people that felt that they were not being told the truth. And them bringing that up is more than just someone being a quote unquote hater, right?
And so part of the reason I share a lot about my health journey is because I have that guilt, and that guilt is going to follow me forever. And I did it unintentionally, and I did it because I myself was broken. But I believe that there has to be this space where we can acknowledge that bodies come in different shapes and sizes, while at the same time acknowledge that just because your body doesn't fit a certain shape doesn't mean you should not care how you feel. It's a really complicated conversation, and it is very nuanced, and there are a lot of very angry voices in it. And I understand why they're angry, right? I get that anger because I've been there, and in a lot of ways, in some ways, I'm still there. But the messaging is at times causing the same problems it's trying to prevent.
I mean, yeah, I pretty much agree with that. I think a lot of times the messaging is definitely not the best.
And I don't know if I'll ever be smart enough or eloquent enough to fully explain that dichotomy, but it is a community that saved me, but also a community that broke me. And that is a really, really difficult thing to explain.
I want to share with you something that my mentor told me a long time ago about why people seek help. And he's a joint replacement surgeon, right? So he deals with people who have terrible arthritis in their knees and their hips all the time. And he asked me, he said, do you know when people come to me and they say, I want a knee replacement? And I said, oh, like, when their x-ray looks terrible and they're in so much pain. And he said, it's not about the pain. People can handle pain, and people are handling pain all the time. It's when you are emotionally fatigued from the pain that is when they come to see me and they tell me they need help. And so you should feel no guilt in that you felt like it took too long for you to seek answers and reach out for help. I would say that's the norm.
Thank you. Thank you for telling me that. Honestly, thank you. It got to the point where I was afraid I was going to die. I know that
whole story. I mean, I think that's interesting and that's good, but it doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't really explain what she was just talking about, because she was talking about the fact that she herself feels that she had hurt others by the stuff that she was sharing. And so I don't know, like it's a good story, I guess, but it just has nothing to really do with what she was talking about, but whatever.
Sounds like dramatic, but I was also having extremely intense periods. I was bleeding constantly. Like I just felt like my body was on the verge of shutting down. And if this is what living was like, then I didn't want to live. And so at that point, it became a choice of, do I want to die like this? Or do I want to try and make it better? And it took me a year of therapy to get to the point where I could mentally see a doctor, because I was so paranoid from all the things I'd heard. And part of that paranoia came from an experience I had when I first entered the body positive movement, where I went to a doctor. At this point, I was still really active. I was running about 3 miles a day. I was smaller than I am currently and eating, pretty healthy. So I went to the doctor. I walked in. She ran all my labs. There was nothing wrong. I did not have, diabetes, prediabetes. At this point, nothing was wrong with me. And she tried to put me on diabetes medication simply because I was overweight, even though my blood labs did not indicate I needed it. Then she tried to sell me a program where I give myself a shot and eat 600 grams of chicken or something like that. Do you know what that is, by the way? It's like some shot you don't eat, and then you eat like a tiny amount of protein, and that's it. And she was like, I want you to do this for 30 days. And I literally was like, hell to the no, no, no. I will not. Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you even know what that is?
I have no idea what that is. I mean, nowadays.
So what they are talking about right there, what this diet is I've done a little bit of research, the Google machine, pretty good with it. It is the HCG diet plan. So we're going to go ahead and read a little bit about this. The HCG, which stands for human, I don't know how to say that word or that word, so we're just going to say HCG. You guys can read it for yourselves. Is known as the pregnancy hormone since it is produced during pregnancy by the placenta. The HCG diet plan, however, has nothing to do with pregnancy. It is a controversial weight loss plan that combines illegal HCG supplements for hormone injections with an extremely low calorie diet, right? So extremely low calorie diet. I wonder what is making you lose weight. It's, who knows? And the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, has only approved prescription for HCG drugs for the treatment of female infertility. No HCG supplements may be legally sold in the United States for weight loss. And the FDA has issued a warning about their safety, right? And so if we go ahead and scroll down here, I just thought this was funny because like the pros of the HCG diet plan, right? Rapid weight loss. Going on the HCG diet plan will probably lead to rapid weight loss, at least initially. However, the evidence shows HCG hormone injections do not influence the amount of weight that people lose. Any weight loss is due solely to reducing calories, right? But then the cons of the HCG diet plan: HCG supplements are illegal. I just think that's hilarious. So it says the U.S. HCG injections, the supplements may only be legally prescribed to treat female infertility. The FDA has banned all over-the-counter HCG products, and therefore the HCG product sold as a weight loss aid is illegal. So that's the diet that she is talking about in this portion of the video or of the podcast.
With the era of Ozempic, right? Yeah. People think shots. That's
no, it was
norm,
not Ozempic.
I don't believe that was the norm.
This was this was before that, and it was like some crazy thing. And then you would reintegrate food. So I remember being terrified because she also sat me down and she's like, "You need to exercise more. You need to do this." And I'm like, "I'm running 3 miles a day. There is nothing more I can do." So I had that experience, and
so this is the beginning of her in body positivity. So she has, and this is, I think, the crux of a lot of the issues, is that Anna, when a doctor says something that she doesn't like to hear or disagrees with, they are wrong and they're lying and they're terrible people. But then when a doctor says something that she agrees with, she's like, oh my God, I'm a medical mystery. And this is the reason that everything is wrong with me. And it has nothing to do with anything that I'm doing, because I'm running, 7 miles a day and I'm doing 20 workouts every single day. And it's just like, all right.
Now let's add to the table. I've gained back the weight. So now I'm 100 pounds heavier. What is that doctor going to say to me now? If that was my last experience, what is that doctor going to say to me now? They're going to say, you're trash. And now I've heard from everybody else around the internet that when you get bigger, it just gets worse and worse and worse. And they're nasty and mean and they do all these things. So my fear of the doctor was intense. So after a year of therapy, I kind of went through it. I saw a doctor through a process of extreme elimination. ZocDoc is amazing to get reviews on doctors, so you can at least get a gist of what people like and don't like about them. And so I read all of the reviews, and luckily someone who was plus size had already seen this doctor and said that they were kind and compassionate and all of that. And I said, awesome, I'm going to go to this person.
So she found a doctor that she felt would not say anything about her weight and would just basically let her say what she wants to say, and then that's it.
That doctor, I can definitively say, changed my life, because they started the process for where I am now. And when I went in to see him, he sat down, and honestly, I walked in with going back to shots. I said, just give me Ozempic. Just do it. If it'll make me feel better, I can't feel this way, because I honestly believed that the solution to my problem was that I needed to lose weight. So I had worked through therapy to accept that losing weight could help my health. I went through a lot of things to try to accept the fact that I was going to have to lose weight. Right?
So now she's saying that she has decided she wants to lose weight, and she believes that losing weight will help some of her issues, right? So she goes to the doctor and she's basically just asking for Ozempic. All right. So now we have gone from, I don't need to lose weight and everything's fine, to now I know I need to lose weight and now I want to take Ozempic to make that happen.
Right. And that wasn't a bad thing, but it was about feeling better. So I went into this doctor and I'm like, just give me the shot. And he literally looked at me and was like, how can I give you a medicine if I don't know if you're sick? And it kind of took me back. He's like, I'm not giving you anything until we read your labs. He's like, I don't know what's going on with you. And that is not a professional thing to do. Just hand over medication to a patient I've just met. So he ran some labs on me. And the first thing that came up is that I was in a really bad place. My instincts of the fact that I was on the verge of death weren't necessarily so wrong. I had major deficiencies in a lot of different vitamins. I had a lot of anemia and I was losing blood. Additionally, I came back as positive for Hashimoto's. So I literally thought, okay, these are the answers, right? So put on the medication for, get on Synthroid, which is what you take for thyroid disorder, or hypo, or the what?
So Hashimoto's thyroiditis, and it actually can cause hyper or hypo, depending on it's your body's attack on your thyroid, which affects the production of the thyroid hormone. So a medication like Synthroid is given when you have abnormally levels of low thyroid hormone in your body.
Okay, thank you. So I got put on Synthroid. I got put on all these vitamins. Immediately, things started to improve to a point. I started having more energy. I started having less days in extreme fatigue.
And this is where I think a lot of people started to notice with Anna that there's this cycle, right? We've talked a lot about the Amberlyn Reed cycle, but when it comes to Anna, I think I saw a comment about this, and maybe it was one of her videos or maybe it was on Reddit or something like that, but it was something along the gist of Anna finds some sort of diagnosis, is excited about the fact that she's diagnosed and now has a quote unquote reason why she has these struggles, starts taking the medicine, feels that she is all better now and can do whatever she wants, ends up making a crazy plan and working herself too hard. And then she, drives herself down to the ground to where she can't do that thing anymore. And then she is, feels terrible again. And then rinse and repeat, goes and searches for another diagnosis that's the cause of her problems, and then that's the new thing, and then she does something about it. She gets a medication, she feels way better, everything's everything's better now, and this is the problem, and now look what I can do. I can run a 5K, I can do all these things, I can jump around, whatever. And then buries herself into the ground, and then the cycle repeats itself, right? Where I think a lot of this stuff, a lot of these problems can be solved with, focusing on the weight loss and focusing on it for a long time. It's going to take a long time to lose the weight, and finding ways that are healthy that you can do for an extended period of time, and not trying to go right out the gate, trying to run, right? Trying to post all of these things and like, look what I can do. I can do all of these different things and I'm still so active. Like, just start slow and understand that your body can't do that yet. But eventually, maybe if you stick to it for a long time, maybe you'll be able to do that. But you're not going to be able to do it in a month, in 2 months, in 3 months, even in 4 months, right? It's going to take a long time.
So I started to feel better, and I was like, this is it. I've solved all my problems. I started to lose weight just because my thyroid was now working. That's a problem. So I was like, everything's solved. Everything's done. Everything's great. And it was good for a couple months, but then a lot of the stuff started to come back. So I did get relief. It's just not in the permanency that I expected. So I started to have fatigue again. I started to have anemia that we couldn't get under control. And my doctor was like, I think something's wrong with your menstrual cycle, your lady bits. Something's not right down there. So he said, I'm going to refer you to an OBGYN. I probably needed to see one anyway, because again, I hadn't been to the doctor in a really long time. So he referred me to someone that was with my insurance, and I walked into the room, and he had just built this great perspective of doctors for me. So I went in with full hope and full glory. Like, the entire medical community has changed. Everything is great. We're respected and cared about now. Yay. And this woman was absolutely terrible to me. She would not give me the treatment that my doctor had requested I'd have, because she said that I was just too fat for it. And she refused to give me a pap smear for the same reason. She said that the only thing that was wrong with me was that I was too fat. And repeatedly told me this, to the point where I broke down crying.
So if that actually happened, right, the only thing that's wrong with you is you are too fat. That's clearly a problem, right? That's not right. And if that actually happened, that's horrible. And I hate to say this, but it's just with Anna, there have been so many things that have been stretched and not true that it's just hard to believe that. And it's like, the initial thing where my mind goes is like, maybe there was just a couple things that maybe Anna didn't want to hear. And then she decided, oh, this person's not going to tell me the things that I want to hear. And so therefore they're evil, bad, and they're the worst person in the world. And I need to find someone else, right?
In the parking lot outside, I messaged my doctor in the little portal, and I said, I guess I'm just too fat for a normal period. And he was like, listen, I have a friend. He's not going to be covered by your insurance, but he's good. He will listen to you, and he's my friend. His approach to medicine is the same as my approach to medicine. And I remember walking to that office and being like, this is going to be a train wreck again. I don't know if I can take it. If this happens again, I don't know if I can keep going. And he sat me down. He said, I'm not here to treat your weight. I'm here to treat your illness. Again, that same kind of messaging where I'm like, okay, this guy has got it. So he did all of the things, and he said, I'm going to biopsy you. You shouldn't be bleeding this much. You are on all of these iron supplements and you're still anemic. That doesn't seem right. So they ended up doing a biopsy. They did find a growth in my uterus, and it was inconclusive. The test was inconclusive. So it could have been cancerous. It could not have been. And he's like, we're going to have a surgery date for you in 3 weeks. You need to get it out. So like, I went in from hearing nothing's wrong with you, you're just fat too, to hearing you have a growth and it needs to be removed immediately because we're concerned about its size. Finding out I had to pay out of pocket to receive basic care just because I was in a bigger body was so frustrating and so debilitating, because at this point I'd already spent so much money. I was driving to see doctors. It's like, I couldn't catch a break. And then to be in a situation where someone literally refused to give me basic care that my primary care doctor had already requested because they were concerned something was going on is wild to me, right? And that was an acceptable answer, and that was okay, and that person felt entirely comfortable doing it. And then to have to pay out of pocket to get the basic standard tests that lots of people get all of the time and find out, oh, I do have a tumor, was just so incredibly frustrating. Like, why did I have to pay to find out something that we pretty much already had a good inkling might be happening, just because someone didn't want to believe it? Someone didn't believe that a plus size person could actually have an issue, that it couldn't be anything other than my weight. There's no way. And I had to pay for someone to believe me.
So I think that as far as that is concerned, I can understand that frustration, and I don't, I can understand feeling frustrated about that, but I think it's like where the talking in absolutes is like the only reason that this happened is because I'm bigger. I think a lot of times when you assume what the reason is, you can prescribe anything to that, right? You can say, see, it's because of this. It's because of this. When there are plenty of times when people have to get a second opinion. There are plenty of times when things don't go your way. When a doctor misses something, like that happens, right? And so when you're in your head thinking the only reason is because I'm big, when anything negative happens, whenever something negative happens, you can be like, see, told you, it's because I'm big, right? And I think that's part of what's kind of happening here.
So I was scheduled for surgery 3 weeks later. I had to have some really tough conversations about anesthesia and what that meant in a bigger body. But again, because I had a doctor that actually was educated about plus size, he was able to find an anesthesiologist to work with him that had worked on bigger bodies before. And I was able to have a really successful surgery. Fortunately, when we came out of that surgery, it was benign, the growth, and it was removed, but there began to be questions about my estrogen levels. They weren't necessarily tracking high, but the nature of the growth made it feel like there was potentially too much estrogen in my body. So it didn't make sense. Let's just put it that way. And there's several times in my journey where things don't make sense. So that happened. And again, when I had the tumor and I had that removed, that was really scary because we didn't know if it was cancerous or not. It really came down to, oh, this is a hormonal thing. This is, maybe related to your weight, may not be, but we've solved it and we have precautions going forward. That's never going to be an issue again. You're going to feel less anemic. I was like, we've solved it. Everything's done. I'm great. Things are perfect. And then those problems didn't go away. I still have issues with anemia. I still have exhaustion. But every time you go into a surgery or a major treatment like that, you hope on the other side that that's the answer. And it is a little bit of a heartbreak every single time you get that diagnosis and you start that treatment and you think, this is it. This is the time where everything gets better and I can magically be this person that I have dreamed of being or have been previously. And then you find out you can't.
So that right there, right? So it almost explains what I was talking about earlier, which is this hope and this cycle that happens is, oh, this is the problem. This is the thing. And once I get it figured out, everything's going to be better. Instead of really coming to terms with maybe this is something that I need to take responsibility for and that I need to slowly chip away at over time, and it's going to be hard, it's going to be difficult, and I'm going to have to stick to it for an extended period of time, and I have to take some responsibility and understand that I have to make these changes. Instead, it's like, I found the thing. This is the reason that I'm struggling with this. It has nothing to do with my weight. It's actually this, or this is exactly the problem, right? Is trying to, instead of looking at the most obvious kind of answer that could be the reason why you're struggling with all of these things, it's like, no, it definitely can't be that. It has to be these other reasons. And there's a secret, and I'm special, right? I'm special. I'm different than everyone else. And this is the reason that I'm having these struggles, right?
And it's hard to keep faith that you'll get there. One of the hardest things about being on a journey to figure out your health, whether it's something like I have or a completely different condition, is that you feel insane 75% of the time because you don't have answers. Like answers, even if they're terrible, knowing what's going on or even the hope of knowing what's going on is the only thing that kind of keeps you alive some days. There's still so much I don't have answers for. And sometimes it does feel like, am I going to feel shitty for the rest of my life? Is my health going to be unpredictable and uncontrollable and unexpected for the rest of my life? So when I stopped losing weight, it became really frustrating. So I ended up working on a campaign related to weight, and I met a doctor that I really loved who studied obesity conditions.
So so right here, again, it is, I don't know why this is a rewinding of history and like not being completely honest. So I'm pretty sure what she's talking about right here is when she started working with Novo Nordisk, who makes Wegovy. I think it's Wegovy. It's one of the GLP-1 medications, right? And so she did a campaign with them where she was taking these medications. She was losing weight. People noticed that she was losing weight, but she wasn't putting it out there. It was very strange because there was a whole video on the Novo Nordisk channel where it was this fake, like basically talk show where they're talking about it. And so she was using these GLP-1 medications to lose weight. And lo and behold, she was losing weight on them like other people do that aren't medical mysteries. And so that I just wanted to put that out there. That's kind of what was happening. Yeah. So I think it's Ozempic and Wegovy that they make.
And I decided to take a next step and try to figure out what was going on by going to see her. So I started driving to Houston once a month to see this doctor. And I did start taking Ozempic, but the weirdest thing happened through that process is, yes, I lost weight, but not as quickly as they would have imagined. But what did happen is...
So, yes, I lost weight, but that has nothing to do with it. There was actually more to the thing.
I started to have just a complete reduction in pain and increased mobility. So I started becoming more and more active because the barriers to my activity had suddenly been reduced.
So the barriers to your activity had been reduced because now you're not, what I think it was like the inflammation is gone, but maybe also because you had lost some weight, you were more mobile and able to move more, you know, like maybe that had something to do with it.
So it didn't hurt as much to kneel, or all of my joints used to hurt really bad. So she began to see that that was a little weird. That was another kind of weird behavior. And this starts a kind of trend of things just being slightly off. So she submits a swab for genetic testing for what's called the Rare Obesity Panel. Now, this panel is not the same as the obesity gene panel that you see a lot of people are doing research on right now. These are for conditions that are classified as rare. So like the weird ones. My doctor basically sat me down and she said, listen, I've never had a patient have one of these genes personally, but it is something that we just want to eliminate because your body is not showing normal behavior. So went in, had my rare obesity panel done, and lo and behold, I come back with 2 genes. So essentially what happened when I got my genetic results back is they give you a little counselor that sits down with you and walks you through your genetic tests and what they mean. One of the genes is a known gene. It has a lot of different things associated with it. And then additionally, they were like, oh, by the way, these are so rare, no one will ever research them. So good luck. Have a nice day. Goodbye. Like that's literally what they told me. And my doctor there was like, I'm not a geneticist, so we can try things. We can figure out what we can do, but I can't guarantee that it's going to work because at this point, we don't really know. I haven't seen this before.
So again, it's just stuff like this where it's doing so much searching to find a reason why, oh, there's nothing I can do about it. See, it's completely out of my control. But at the same time, Anna has shown that she has lost weight. She said it in this podcast in the past. She lost 100 pounds, right? And then one time she lost a ton of weight again, and then she went on Ozempic or Wegovy, whichever one it was, and lost a good amount of weight again, and she was able to move more, but the weight loss is impossible for her, and it's not actually has anything to do with her health. But when she lost weight, she was able to be more active, and she felt the best that she had felt in a long time. I mean, I don't know.
Or I don't have any previous experience to go off of. She talked to some of her colleagues at a variety of different places. No one had seen the combination of the two genes. So there was just really nothing to go on as part of what do we do. About 7 years prior to this, I got an email from a woman, and she wrote me an email and was like, I think you have this condition called lipedema. And I was like, it is so uncool to try to diagnose somebody on the internet. And I unfortunately talked mad shit about this woman behind her back. And I feel bad because at that point, I just was sick of people telling me what they thought about my health. And
so she says there that she is sick of what people were saying about her health when someone is like, hey, I think that this is a thing that you might be dealing with that might explain why it's so hard for you to lose weight. But she behind her back talks a bunch of crap about her, but at the same time is like, I don't understand what's going on with my weight. But she had someone that messaged her 7 years ago saying, hey, this might be something that you want to look into. But instead of actually looking into this thing that is an actual thing, lipedema is a real thing, she's like, nope, that doesn't exist. That's fake. It doesn't make any sense, brother.
So I totally tuned it out. I didn't even believe it was a real condition. I think I need to say that. I need to say that I thought it was something made up. Like made up, like, hey, you're delusional. I'm just going to tell you that this is your diagnosis so you stop bothering me, like a pseudo diagnosis. When I started going through this medical process.
So she goes really hard on this point. Like, I didn't believe that it was real. I didn't think that it's a real thing. I think people are just making it up. And this is a theory, okay? But I think the reason that she goes so hard on this, personally, I'm not sure if she actually even believes that. I think she might be saying that again to quell what other people have said, where it's like, it's always something. There's always a reason. There's always a new diagnosis. So her saying, I didn't even believe that's a real thing, is a way to get in front of that criticism, right? So you can't say that I think that it's always a problem because I didn't even believe lipedema was real. And she clearly has it, right?
Yes, that word came up again. And I was like, the made up disease. They're just telling me that because they don't want to say we don't know why you're fat. Instead of saying that, we'll give you a fancy, shiny word. You'll feel better about it, but it's just because we don't know. And that's literally what I thought for a very long time. So when I went to the obesity specialist doctor, I did bring up lipedema with her, mostly because I had received that email before. I'd had other doctors allude to that potentially being a problem, but did not understand the condition enough to actually say for sure if it was.
I don't understand that, man. Like, she's saying that she's going through all of this turmoil and strife and struggle trying to figure out a reason why she can't lose weight, or it's so hard for her to lose weight, or it's like impossible. And then there are multiple people that have told her about this disease that she might have, and she's decided that that's actually not real. It doesn't make any sense. It just doesn't make any sense.
And I just wanted a diagnosis. Sometimes you just want someone to tell you like, yep, that's it. So you feel a little less crazy. So I brought it up with her and she was like, yeah, like immediately. Yeah. And then I was like, you're just going to say yes. And she's like, well, we'll do a couple things, but yeah. It was kind of one of those things where like, it's pretty obvious I have it because I don't have any weight on my hands and my feet with how big I am. And because I have orange peel texture, because I have certain ways of accumulation, because it's completely symmetrical, because it's in certain parts of my body. There's just a lot of things that indicate.
So
yeah, there's definitely a look to lipedema. And like, I've never been like, I don't think she has it. I think it's clear. It's very clear that she has it. And it's not a surprise to me at all.
lipedema is, most fat that accumulates in the body. We have peripheral fat. We have something called visceral fat, which is on the insides in our organs. And lipedema is a condition where the fat gets almost clumped together in a way that it will never go away with diet and exercise. So it's a type of fat that is different from the normal fat in your body and doesn't respond to the typical ways how fat expands and decreases. So it primarily accumulates on the thighs. Sometimes it can accumulate on the arms, but the character of the fat is also different. So whereas most fat is yellow and spongy, lipedema is typically more hard and isn't as mobile as regular fat. Lipedema is a real condition. It is difficult to differentiate between what is lipedema and what is just, say, fat as part of general obesity. But specifically, lipedema does not respond to the general ways of how to decrease fat. And so you may be doing a lot of exercising and a lot of dieting, and you may never lose that fat.
And
I don't disagree with that, right? Lipedema is definitely different, but what's frustrating is that to go straight into, you may diet and exercise and you may never lose the lipedema fat, right? That's frustrating because I've had plenty of people in my comment section say they have lipedema, and yeah, it's harder, but it is something that you can still deal with. And it's not like you're diagnosed. The reason I don't like that kind of framing is that it makes it seem that if you're diagnosed with lipedema, it's just basically a matter of time until it takes over your entire life and you look nothing like you did before. There are certainly ways, living a healthy lifestyle, it will absolutely help the condition and make it not get to a point to where it takes over your life and you have nothing that you can do about it, right? And you don't have to get these, we're going to get into this, but get these expensive surgeries that Anna is promoting now, right? You don't have to go to that point. It does not have to get there. And framing it in the way where it's like, there's nothing you can do about it, I don't like that. And I think that it's wrong.
I think on top of that too, I live a very public life. Everybody has the ability to see and comment on my life. So when I started talking about potentially having this condition, I received so much backlash that it must be just made up, which is crazy. Like, I am an adult woman with a good education, and still, when enough people tell you that you're crazy, you begin to wonder if you're the problem. So my obesity doctor did officially give me that diagnosis and was basically like, I'm out of my depth at this point. You need to go see a lipedema specialist. So we did some research. We picked a couple doctors, which I then flew to LA because they were all in LA, the ones that were pretty active in research. So I go to LA, I go see this doctor, and he's like, whoa, you got real bad lipedema. Like, it is real bad. You need to have surgery sooner rather than later. Now, I've got to go back to that feeling about lipedema. I still, at this point, even though I was posting about it, talking about it, because I was trying to justify my body, but internally, deep down inside, I still was like, is this a made up illness? Is this a doctor in LA who wants to sell me plastic surgery? Because also that is what I heard from a lot of people online. I heard every single day about how I was taking the easy way out and that I was cheating and that I was going to this doctor to magically fix my problems rather than, diet and exercise, calorie in, calorie out.
So I think that there can be two truths at the same time. I think that focusing on calories in, calories out, living a healthier lifestyle is a good idea in general. And I also think that there are probably plenty of doctors out there that want to make a quick buck, especially with Anna's size on social media. They want to have her post about them, right? I've had plastic surgeons reach out to me about loose skin surgery. I'll give you a discount if you post about us and stuff like that. So like, that is something that happens. And so I think that two things can be true at the same time.
Solutions. And so I grappled with that even through the surgery process, but I mentally decided if I knew I couldn't lose weight by making the healthy choices I'd made, then what was wrong with trying to get to a better body in this route? I just wanted to feel alive again, because I think once you have a taste of that lifestyle and you're like, wow, if it was just like 25% better than this, then what are all the things I could do? Because I was still limited, right? So I was like, well, what if I can open up just more activity, more movement, more living? And I think one thing that has always bothered me, going back slightly to the plus size community, is they never talk about that loss of living. Let's throw all of the thing about healthy or unhealthy out about bigger bodies. Let's throw all of that out. Let's say that there is literally no health difference. There is a loss of experience and a loss of living that comes from living in a bigger body. So
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I think that you know, it is frustrating. It's like, oh, health, you know, you can be healthy, whatever. But it's like, if you are significantly overweight, the things that you can and can't do are just different than the things you can or can't do when you're not in that position, right?
proceed down the surgical route. We get in for my first surgery, and he goes, wow, your skin's really hard and fibrotic. He goes, still looking at you, I think I'm going to get in there, and I think I'm going to need to take, like, I think 6 liters or something. He gets in there and he ends up taking 9.
So another thing that had happened right around this time that seems to be kind of skipped is that up until Anna found out that this surgery was an option, she was very adamant about how much more mobile she was and how she was able to move so much more. And this is when the whole 5K debacle happened, right? She was running and she was able to do this 5K. And then not long after that, she finds out about this surgery, and then like it was just such a switch, because she went from running the 5K to like, I can barely move. I'm in so much pain. I'm you know, everything is crumbling around me, and I need this surgery, because if I don't get the surgery, I'm not going to be able to do anything anymore. And like, I'm in such a terrible spot. And so a lot of people were like, last week, I don't know if it was actually a week, but it was like, last week you were running a 5K, or at least claiming that you were running a 5K, and you've never felt better. And this is the best you felt. And now all of a sudden, a few weeks later, you're getting a surgery because you are in such a terrible position. It was like, what is the truth here? What is actually happening? Right? So that's something that I think is interesting that was kind of skipped over.
9 liters. And he said it was the most fibrotic he's ever seen anyone. So we're having a little bit of, what? That seems a little odd. But whatever. So we have this surgery. He removes way more. He says it's the most fibrotic patient he's ever seen. He said that my legs were literally like concrete under the surface. And I get through the first surgery, and instantly my pain levels are entirely different. The first night in the recovery area, I'm dancing. I'm up on my feet dancing because they tell us we have to walk. And the nurse has to be like, yo, calm down. And everyone tells me, oh, it's the pain meds. Once the pain meds come off from surgery and if you tell, bro, no, never went back. I was just like, my life was instantly better. And I was like, oh my God. And I still didn't believe that this was a medical condition deep in my heart. I still thought I was just fat.
Bro, that is crazy to say right there. You get a surgery to get rid of this fat. You have a doctor telling you that it's the craziest thing you've ever seen, and you are posting about this on your social media, you know, telling people this is what's going on. This is the truth. This is what's going on. And you say that you still don't actually believe it. That's wild to me. I'm sorry. That's crazy.
But that my legs were lighter, and that's why everything was better. So, of course, I heal to the point where I can for the next surgery. I have my second round of surgeries. My second surgery was really intense. You get a lot of hormone release. So I got depression, but it was like weird because I've never been depressed. So it's not something I have ever dealt with. And when I decided to have surgery, I decided I would be public about it, cover most, if not all of it. So,
I mean, yeah, like you've kind of shared everything up to this point. I think it would be like, I think like you're an influencer, right? So like, yeah, of course you've shared your surgery.
While I was recovering from surgery, I started having these really weird comments about bagels. And I was like, I don't understand why I'm getting all these comments about bagels. And so I had to ask, what is going on in relation to bagels? I don't understand it. So previously to having surgery, we recorded a video where my doctor had asked me to keep walking prior to surgery, even though my pain had increased significantly because I'd gone off of the Wegovy. So I was no longer having any inflammation support. You also can't take Tylenol. So you're basically like SOL on any type of pain relief, but you need to stay active. So it's not a great time. It is not a fun party. You do not want to go to this event. So I was in New York and I was like, I really want this bagel because I have to walk. I'm going to make myself walk 2 miles to get this bagel. Right. And I was like, I'll make it a fun little YouTube video for anyone who's dealing with chronic illness. They'll get it. Pain days are the worst. So I walk and.
So now we're talking about Bagelgate, and I just think we've skipped so many things. The fact that she decided to bring this up is just so funny. It's so funny to me. But the reason it's very important, the reason that so many people were confused is because not long before the whole Bagelgate thing, and she struggled so much to walk this 2 miles and get this bagel, she's running a 5K and saying that she's so active and she's never felt better and she's moving so much. And then like not long after, okay, now we can barely even walk 2 miles and this is the hardest thing I've ever done and I've never been in so much pain. It was just, again, the whiplash, right?
At various times during this walk, I have to stop and sit down because I'm in pain. And we get to the bagel shop.
And so she skips through so much of the video. There was a lot of the criticism of the video was the way that she was acting. And she ended up like making fun of street performers during this walk, like just being incredibly rude, right? And again, so there was a lot of criticism, not just about what she is going to bring up here. And I think that's very frustrating. And it's very interesting that, again, it's like, oh, people were just haters because of this really weird reason. I have no idea. But there was a lot of people that were critical. I made a video. I'll link it in the description about the whole bagel situation. But like, it wasn't just about, oh my God, she's crying about a bagel. There was so much more to that story than this, right? But again, that doesn't fit the narrative, right?
Literally just before close, I ordered my bagel and I'm like, I'm so happy I did this. Look at me. I can do hard things, which is something I really told myself a lot during this journey. You can do hard things. So I was like so excited. And I was like, let's just take a cab home so I can eat this laying down because physically I don't want to move anymore. So we get our bagel, we get in the cab, we drive home. I get home to the hotel. I'm filming myself unwrapping it. And it's not the bagel I ordered. It's not the bagel I walked 2 miles. Now, to set context here, I'm having surgery in 2 days. I've been off of all of this medication that helps me stay regular in a lot of different ways. So I am a hormonal nightmare, right? I'm also in a lot of pain. So I just start bawling over this bagel, right?
Okay, yeah, those are all fair things. But again, no one is forcing you to film this video. No one is forcing you to film this. No one is forcing you to film yourself crying. No one is forcing you to do that at all, right? No one is. You are deciding to do this. So you could cut, like, there are so many choices that are unexplainable, And then again, it's always, all of these people are so terrible and they're all horrible for, there have been so many instances of Anna being a menace to the general public. There have been multiple videos of her going to different stores, being incredibly rude and destructive, basically, to the store, to a point where she had to delete videos because so many people were like, what are you doing, right? I think it was like a JCPenney one and a Target one where people were like, why are you acting that way? That was a lot of what was going on in this Bagelgate video, right, that people were talking about. But again, that's not mentioned because it's just, the people on the internet are mean to me because I'm fat. And it's just not true. It's just not true, right?
I just am like literally buckets of tears because this is all the stress of my first surgery coming out. This is all the hormones that are rolling around in my body. This is everything coming out. This is the pain I'm feeling because it hurts. So I am crying over this bagel and I was like, I just wanted this bagel, right? And then the next day I order the bagel and that's the end of the video. And I'm like, I got it. It's fine, right? So they pick this video up and they make so many videos about fat girl cries over bagel. And they turn it into a fat girl doesn't get what she wants, and so she cries. They erase the entire part about the fact that it had literally nothing to do with the bagel. The bagel was just the thing that I was crying about, but it was like very
bagel.
It's not about. And this is what people started to say. So people started commenting Bagelgate. And then started commenting, it was never about the bagel. So this turns into this whole thing where people are...
Again, it's just so funny that she is talking about this for So long, man.
Or just talking about bagels vaguely around me, and I have no clue what's going on, right? And they knew I was in surgery. They knew that I was having this major surgery, and that's the thing they decided to go in on, is that I cried over a bagel. And I'm just like, y'all, I just had a major surgery.
Remember, I just want to make it clear. The title of that video was, I walked 2 miles for a bagel. All right. So that was the focus of your video. That's what you titled it. I just want to put that out there.
No compassion for me as a human being at all. And then I begin to wonder, is it really worth going through this 2 or 3 more times? It's hard. Recovery is a process. Even with the great results I had from the first surgery, recovery from a major surgery is rough. So everything's kind of on pause, right? And I even moved my surgeries a little bit later. And I honestly, my doctor's going to listen to this and be like, you were considering not doing your other surgeries. I'm sure of it. But I was, because again, I thought I was delusional. I still at this point thought that this was a fake condition, even though I was advocating for it and talking about it. I feel like such a scam. So
that's wild. She says that herself. She's gotten 2 surgeries. She's promoting it, promoting doctors, right? She has promoted these doctors multiple times. I'm assuming, I'd be surprised if there was no kickback or like she wasn't getting discounted on these surgeries. And she still doesn't even actually believe it. I don't know if she's just, again, Anna a lot of times likes to say stuff that sounds good. And I think maybe she feels this sounds good. But like, if that's actually how she felt, that's crazy. Because there are people that are listening to what you are saying and believing in what you're saying. And to say that you don't even actually believe it but you are fine promoting it to your followers is wild.
I started to have really, really bad inflammation post the second surgery. And I've always had issues with inflammation. It's always been part of the journey, but it became really obvious through this because they just took 22 liters total, so 50 pounds out of my body. And I was heavier than the day I went in for my first surgery. And that was crazy. Like, that was unusual. So they had me go see a specialist in Tucson. Her name is Dr. Herbst. So Dr. Herbst is a board certified endocrinologist that is actually researching the genetics related to fat disorders like lipedema, for example.
And the reason that people were critical about this was because there is a very strong relationship between this new doctor that Anna is talking about and the person that did her surgeries, right? They basically worked together, but that was never mentioned. And that's just very interesting.
And if you know anything about lipedema, she is the OG. She is the queen. She's the queen. And I go and see her. I'm still having all of this inside. I'm still debating if I'm going to do the other surgeries. I'm like, is this worth it? Is this just cosmetic? I'm starting to have, with the inflammation, a lot of exhaustion and stuff like that, which is natural with inflammation. So she does 2 things that caused the aha moment for me. She's like, I'm going to do some, I don't know the name of this, but it is a thing where they do thermal imaging to see how congested your veins are. So they take pictures and it shows almost like a heat map where your veins are enlarged and trapped. So she does thermal imaging of my body, lets me see it, and I can see everywhere that I haven't had surgery is bright purple. On my hands, my feet, my face, and the places I had surgery, I have no congestion. So she looks at this thermal imaging and she's like, wow, you're super congested. We talk about some of the areas I have pain. We can see corresponding congestion in that area. She points to a bump on my arm, which I thought was a fat roll. I'm going to be very real with you. I thought it was a fat roll. It's right here, like where you can see kind of like a bump coming out of my arm. And she goes, I don't think that bump is fat. And I was like, oh, it's got to be fat. And she goes, no, that's not fat. So she pulls out an ultrasound and she shows me what's going on under there. And it is a vein that is, I guess, leaked. And sitting under here, and this is the area I haven't had surgery at, I'm having in January, is just a giant pool of plasma that is just sitting in my body. And you can see it. It's wild. And that's when it clicked for me that this is a real illness, that this is a real thing, because I saw in my body the congested veins and I saw the pooling out in my arm.
What is just so crazy about that? I know I already said it, but she says it right there that she had gotten 2 liposuction surgeries, but she didn't actually believe that this was a real thing. Again, it's like, I just don't even know what to believe anymore, because if that's true, that is wild. And then on top of it, she was promoting it to her followers and saying that you should do this, you should go to this person's the best, but she doesn't even actually believe that it's a real condition that she has. It just doesn't make any sense to me at all.
We also ultrasound a variety of different places that were not surgical yet, and saw that all of the lower veins in the body have been compressed and they're not able to work. And the blood is traveling through the top veins, which have now expanded and are engorged. So that's what's causing a lot of the pain and congestion in my body, is because my blood is moving through 1/8 of the veins it should be moving through.
Probably ties back to your anemia.
Yeah. Well, we're going to keep going down this because we're not done. So she's looking at all of this and she goes, let me take a look at your thighs. And she looks down at my thighs and she's like, oh my gosh, it's like teeth. I've never seen this before. And this is where I just had surgery. So I produce very quickly, or at least we see from this ultrasound, scar tissue. I produce scar tissue at a rapid rate because I had literally had surgery 3 weeks before. I should not have had the level of fibrosis that I had in my legs. And she literally, like, this is the woman that's seen every lipedema patient in the planet, looks at it and goes, oh my gosh, I've never seen this before, which is not what you want to hear, by the
Never
way.
a comforting feeling.
No, not a great feeling. And then she goes, I want to talk to you about your genes. And this becomes the first time I begin to understand what these genes do. So she pulls her computer aside. She sits me down. She says, I want to talk to you about your genes. And she goes, you have 2 very interesting variants, and they're both related to the same thing. And she goes, they're related to apoptosis. And I'm like, well, what the hell is that? And I will tell you, if you ever have a geneticist explain to you what something is, their dumbed down version will still be too hard to understand. Because I literally had to be like, can you give me an even dumber version? I have absolutely no clue what you're talking about. But from what I gathered, my dead cells do not properly leave the body and they cause havoc. So that would explain scar tissue forming. It would explain estrogen that was supposed to be taken out of the body not leaving properly. It would explain inflammation problems, not having, clear routes to getting things out of the body.
Well, what's interesting is, and it may be something different, but I don't think so, but apoptosis.
Oh, that's what it is. Yes. Okay.
Okay. Sorry. So apoptosis is the process in which a cell dies.
Yes, that's it. Sorry, I honestly don't know
body
anything yet.
Clears the cells. No, you were actually explaining it perfectly. And it is normal for all of our cells to go through this process of dying and then regenerating. That's in our bone marrow, right? That's where we generate new cells. And so it is normal for our cells to die. There are other cells in our body, primarily it's called the macrophage. Which
she said that word.
Part of the immune system.
This is how she tried to explain it to me.
That then gobbles up those dead cells, and then they go through the rest of your body, and they're cleared. But a problem with apoptosis means that those dead cells don't actually get cleared in the proper way, and so probably all of the cellular material is then what is contributing to the fibrosis, which for people who don't understand what fibrosis is, it's like a thickening and like a hardening of the tissues, almost like a woody characteristic, I guess would be the best kind of way to describe it. Similar to scarring. Scarring is supposed to be a regenerative process, right? It starts by you have a cut, you recruit inflammatory cells. If you don't recruit those, and that's why it gets a little raised and red and swollen, that's actually normal. That's part of the normal process. And then over time, that scar starts to thin out, soften over the period of a year. So there's an evolution, and it's all based on individual cell mechanisms that help with this evolution. So it really does, as I said, a lot of it I think goes back to the genetics, which we're only at the point where we are able to identify a lot of the issues. Now the next challenge is to say, okay, so now what do we do?
Exactly. So essentially, this is the person that is most experienced in this who has never seen this gene before.
So now we have a new diagnosis that basically is the reason why, it's impossible to lose weight, even though Anna in the past has lost significant amounts of weight. And when she was on Ozempic or Wegovy, she lost a lot of weight and was feeling a lot better. But now we have a new reason why it's impossible, and there's nothing that she can do about it, right?
For this pairing of genes, and they are both related to apoptosis. There's limited information, i.e. there's no medical research written about it. It's either been hypothesized or tracked in some way, but it's not like there's no knowledge of other than it's related to this function, what it actually does. So now we know that these genes caused all my symptoms, the weight stuff, the anemia, the lipedema, the tumor, the thyroid issues, but we can't really do anything about it. So it's right there. It's just such a quick thing. We know that this is the reason that I've struggled with all of these things. But the thing is, we don't know that for a fact. We're just kind of saying, well, these are things that I've been struggling with and I have this, so it must be something. It must be that. That's the reason that I'm struggling with it, right? But she said herself in this podcast many times that she has lost a significant amount of weight multiple times. The Ozempic was helping her. It just doesn't, I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Conclusion of my story now, and then it's kind of a sad conclusion, but at least I have a team of people looking into it, is that I am, as it stands right now, I don't want to say a one of one because there's probably somebody out there that's also dealing with this, but for most of the people I'm working with, I'm the only person they've seen with this. So this is all likely genetic, which was great to hear, but a little bit scary because it means it's more complicated. So we've begun the process of sequencing my genes to start, and I'm going to mess this up because, again, this is so out of my depth of understanding, but they're starting to try different pathways to try to understand how my body reacts. This makes sense. They keep saying we're going to run these pathways on it, and I don't know what that means, but it means that they're going to test and see, I guess, if they do this, does my genes do something different? I don't know. But the goal is to see what is happening with that. What was the word?
Apoptosis.
I keep calling it apoptosis, and I have been calling it the wrong thing. So apoptosis.
Apoptosis.
They want to see where else that's having issues, but they think that it's causing me to have stored estrogen. They think it's causing me to have that weird fibrosis that grows just really, really quickly, which explains why I kept gaining weight even when I was not having behaviors that would drive weight gain. And it's
so I'm just curious, right? So if this isn't the answer, what's next, right? Because there's just been so many different things where it's oh, this is it. This is definitely it. You guys, this is definitely it. This is the reason. It has nothing to do with me. It certainly can't be me. And then, okay, well, that wasn't actually it. But this is it now. This is it. This is the reason. This is everything. I don't know, man.
Also, potentially a different way of getting lipedema because it's genetically related versus potentially hormonal. I mean, it's all genetically related, but it's a version that they haven't seen in this capacity. So it's an atypical case. I guess that's the easiest way to say it. And it is unresolved. But at least we know it's related to apoptosis. And anything I'm going to be doing at this point will help other people with issues with apoptosis in the future. Again, that's not a common thing, but hopefully, finding a geneticist that actually will look into it is amazing because that's hard. I was told I would never find one. And then also having the resources to financially be able to afford all of this. And I think, I hope as this series goes on, we talk about that a little bit too, because a lot of these things are not accessible and not affordable and not covered by insurance. Definitely not covered by insurance.
So how does it feel? I know it's been very, very recent, knowing that your whole life all of these struggles have been related to a genetic condition, something that you literally cannot control and had nothing to do with a lifestyle choice, or if you just had better habits.
Nothing to do with your habits. Had nothing to do with that. I'm sorry, I just don't think that that's the truth, because Anna herself has said multiple times in this podcast she has lost significant amounts of weight. And then she just, ended up gaining it back for whatever reason, right? I mean, I guess that we're going to say that it's this new thing that she's been diagnosed with, but I don't know, man.
I am still coming to terms with that. Even though I can only see the times in my life when I should have done better. I still, even with all of this, even though I now have accepted the condition, even though I now have this genetic insight and all of these other things, I still see every moment in my life when I could have done better. And there's still so much guilt and shame around choices that I thought could have been better. And I have been publicly pushing myself to make choices that I once perceived as bad, because I think that I need to learn how to get over that shame, because it's not healthy to carry that burden. Even knowing it's not my fault, I still feel like it is. There is a community of doctors who still do believe that obesity is the individual's fault. And it's not like 10% of our population is overweight. It's like 60% of our population. All these people are getting overweight. What is going on? Our genetics could be changing. Our food could be changing. Our environments could be changing. Our socioeconomic situations could be changing. What is causing people to gain weight? So let's take the morality out of it completely. Like, let's take the choice out of it and say it's not a person's choice. So if it's not their choice, if nobody would choose this, we have to start looking at this as something that's actually a medical issue versus punishing people. I have gone.
Yeah, of course we need to look at it in more than just like making fun of the person because they're fat, right? And they just need to move more. They just need to eat less. But also, like, we have to understand that there is choice in it, and there are choices that we can make. And to completely take the choice out of it, I think, is not a good thing. And like, we should understand that we do have power as individuals to make a change in ourselves, especially when it comes to our weight, compared to a lot of the other things that I'm assuming they're going to be talking about on this, these medical mysteries that there's literally nothing you can do about it and it's just out of your hands. Your weight is there is a level that you can control, right? I was able to lose 200 pounds and I've kept it off for 10 years. It wasn't like that just happened, right? That was work that I put in. Those were choices that I had to make, things that I had to change.
At great lengths to share my medical journey, which at times I've really regretted, to be honest. Like, it's hard. And even with some of the best doctors in the world voicing in on this, people still don't believe me. And sometimes I don't believe it, even though I do. Like, it's this, I can't explain it. When you realize you're just this, your body is unusual. You're like, did they make a mistake? Was the genetics off? Was, like, what happened, right? I guess I just don't want it to be true. And I think the harder part about this is, like, I thought when I started the lipedema surgeries that it would just magically solve everything, or at least I'd get the body that I wanted and had tried for. And I will get that body for some time, but because of the way my body builds fibrosis, it may not be for as long as I want it to be. And, I'm going to keep trying everything that the doctors suggest to me and encourage me to do. But when I really think about it, it's like, I'm going to share something really sad. And I'm sorry I'm going to end this on such a sad note, but I was talking with someone the other week and they were like, you're getting older. Are you concerned about not having kids? And I was like, I don't want to give them this. And the reality is I can. And that's a hard thing to think about. That your genes are bad. And I often sometimes, I'm sorry, this is so sad. This is so depressing, but I sometimes think about like, am I meant to be alive? Because all these things don't work. And I know that that's just, me coming to terms with this, right? And dealing with this. And like, obviously I live at the time I do because I am meant to be alive and I'm meant to probably do this, but I still feel every day conflicted. I don't know if that'll ever go away because there's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do better. And
So that's what I think is the saddest part about this whole thing. Because obviously, it sucks that she feels that way. But what she said right there is there's nothing I can do. And that's like when you take the power away from yourself and like feeling like there's something that you can do, then like what is the point, right? But like I believe that Anna, like there is something that you can do. You can take care of your health and try and make the best decisions possible and do what you want. Do the things that are going to be beneficial for you, eating the right things, moving in the right way, not expecting too much of yourself, right? Those are things that you can do to make your life as enjoyable as possible. But once you start going down this road of like, there's nothing I can do, and what's the point? Like, where does that end? Does that end in a positive place? I don't think so. And that's what's so dangerous about this line of thinking.
Sucks. And as a type A person who just wants to optimize and fix, I can't optimize and fix this.
I mean, you could optimize your situation as much as possible. Like, but if you're sitting there being like, there's nothing I can do about it, so why do anything? Yeah, that's clearly you're not going to be in a good spot, right?
Maybe I'll get lucky and someone will have a breakthrough, but maybe I won't. It's out of my hands. It's out of my hands.
Well, if I could jump through the screen and give you the biggest hug, because it takes true bravery to be this vulnerable, to be this public in order to serve the greater good by sharing your story so that maybe one person won't feel alone.
Yep.
And there are so many just themes that for people who may not necessarily have lipedema or a genetic condition or an autoimmune disorder, just about what it's like living life with a chronic illness, what it's like feeling judged by your doctors, what it's like having to find new doctors, that I think so many people will be able to resonate with and really feel like their own feelings have been validated.
I think if I could end on a positive note, because I just feel like I just cried at the screen for a little while. I cried at the microphone for too long, and now I need to turn it around. Even though everything has been a lot, and it's, I found all of this information out in about 1.5 years, and that's a lot in a very short amount of time. I don't regret doing it, because if we go back to that first doctor's appointment before we knew any of the other things we know now, even just my initial blood work, I may not have made it through without some help. I would have been in the hospital, and it would have been a much different journey. So even though the end result may not be exactly what I wanted, I live a more full life now because I allowed myself to hear hard things. And I think that's the thing I take from all of this. I don't regret it. I don't regret it. I don't feel like I wish I didn't know, because at least now life makes a little bit more sense. And at least now I have resolved the issues I can resolve, right? Sometimes.
But how do you resolve the issues that you can resolve? Like, you really don't think that there's anything else that you can do? There's nothing, no more work that you can put in, that you've done everything you possibly can? Okay.
There is no magical solution to health things. Sometimes it's about persevering and learning to adapt. And I think that's where I'm at right now. And so it's kind of a hard situation to be in, to have to tell this story at this point, because the reality is there may never be a finite end to this, but at least I know, and at least I have people around me who are supporting me. And I think that the thing that really clicked for me is I saw my parents maybe a couple weeks ago, and they were literally all on the weight loss train most of my life. And just having my dad look at me and finally go, I finally get it. He's like, I finally get it. And I'm sorry, I didn't listen to you. And I'm just like, maybe this story will help people see people in bigger bodies a little bit different. And again, it's none of my business what your health is. It's none of my business whether you're healthy or unhealthy. And the reality is I don't have the information to make that decision from someone. And if I can pass on a story that, competes with the norms that we're taught, maybe people will just be kinder to each other. That's the hope, at least.
Be kinder to each other, because Anna's always super kind to everyone in the department stores.
Maybe they'll be kinder to themselves.
Well, I think that's a perfect way to wrap up. And
well, there you go. That's the entire podcast. If you made it to the end of this video, I just want to clap for you and say, great job. We were in this together. It was quite the experience. I don't feel like I have anything else to say. I've said everything that I needed to say. So I'm just going to say, hey, thank you so much for watching this video. If you made it to the end, leave a thumbs up. I would appreciate it. It helps out a lot. Subscribe if you made it to the end. Leave a comment. Do all of the things that help it in the algorithm. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.